This is a nothing. Yes, did they play perfect? No, they still win. Yes.
What are you doing if the Celtics win the championship?
If the Celtics win championship, I might break my sobriety. I might act up.
We did it! You got him.
All the way.
Celtics versus Heat. Celtics in what?
4.
Celtics versus Knicks. Celtics in
4.
You got Celtics in 4? Hell yeah.
Use a vocab word from a couple years ago. It's mind-boggling.
That's it, DRG. Let's go. What do you think tonight? You think I'm worried about the Warriors? I ain't worried about the Let's go, baby. 18, baby. Load up the boat.
Why would you say that?
Because
I'm not. No,
recently he's putting up games like.
Above our head for the players.
Literally right now.
But I think when Marcus, especially Marcus, when he got traded, I think that was a wake-up call.
You think right now,
Rob,
it's still New York?
I do. And when I think of the Celtics dynasty, honestly, one of the first names that comes to my mind is actually Brad Stevens.
What did I just watch? That was interesting. That was interesting, guys. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, well, I don't know where to start here. I really don't, because 3-1 against the Cavaliers feels a little bit different than 2-2 right now. And in all 4 games against the Cavs this season, the Boston Celtics held substantial leads only for the Cleveland Cavaliers to come back pretty well all 4 times, dating back all the way to the NBA Cup. And tonight marks the second time where the Cleveland Cavaliers actually overcome the Boston Celtics, amount that comeback, and win in the end. If you look at the 3 games the rest of the season between the Cavs and the Celtics, it was all in par with this characteristic game, in par in terms of characteristics with this game, because the NBA Cup game, the Celtics, they hold a lead in that game. The Cavaliers eventually come back, make it close at the end, end up losing to the Boston Celtics in that one. Second game in Cleveland, the Boston Celtics go out, grab a 14-point lead in that game, enter the fourth quarter with a double-digit lead. Donovan Mitchell goes insane. Cavaliers come back, win that one, 1-1. Third game in Cleveland, Celtics go up big in that one early, only allowed 15 points in the first quarter against the Cavs. And then the Cavaliers come back, make it a 4-point game late. The Celtics eventually close that one out. And then tonight, again, the Boston Celtics hop out to an immediate 22-point lead, 25-3 run to start the game. 25-3 run to start the game. And after that, it was just chip away by the Cavs. The Celtics go up by 17 again in that third quarter, and it looked like, oh, well, that was going to be the end of the game. But the Cavaliers, they didn't give up. They eventually chip all the way through, break down the wall, and at the end, the Celtics need to make a comeback, which never happened at the end of this game, and the Celtics fall in this one. So in every single game this season, the Celtics have been the better team at getting the lead, sustaining it for big portions of the game, but they haven't been 100% in closing out those leads and have let the Cavaliers come back. Such a prolific offense out there, the Cavaliers are. And tonight, ultimately, the Boston Celtics, they had a chance to prove that nobody was going to touch them this season. Nobody. But now it looks like the Cavaliers, although I would still say the Celtics are the favorites in the East and the Cavs have an uphill battle, there's certainly some data here that suggests the Cavaliers could be a serious threat to the Boston Celtics, whether it's the conference finals or second round or wherever these two teams end up meeting. The Cavaliers, they've definitely shown something against the Boston Celtics this year. And if they ever get out to a lead, I think it's going to be pretty hard for the Celtics to actually go and come back from that, because we just haven't seen it this year. The Celtics have been the ones with the cushions and have just really ripped through them. And this one is, I don't know where we stand necessarily in terms of the whole panel here, because this one is a second straight loss. It's coming off a bad loss against the Detroit Pistons. And this one I would say it's probably not sitting well with the fan base, but we do have to consider some of the good play as of late, which includes winning in Cleveland just a couple of weeks ago. So I want to hear where you guys are out here because I'm a little in
Yeah.
between on this loss.
I feel like if you're not a Celtics if you're a Cavs fan, this was probably one of the best games of the season in the NBA. That, from a vantage point of you're getting performances out of Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Donovan Mitchell, and it was a very entertaining game from an objective standpoint, but a miserable game for the Boston Celtics in the second half of that game, or after the second quarter. The Cavs were obviously going to strike back after that 25-3 run in the first quarter, which was completely started off by the Celtics paint presence and being able to drive to the hole. And then the Cavs started to fire back and slowly but surely started to wean away at that lead that the Celtics had. And they just kept on chipping away at the Celtics attritionally. And then you have Donovan Mitchell get hot and completely wipe out Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown's 83-point combined performance tonight, which you won't see anywhere on national media because they'll be highlighting the performance Donovan Mitchell had tonight because he's the one who walked out with the win.
Right.
I think Cleveland really made their stance tonight that they're not the number one seed in the Eastern Conference for no reason. They're there because they're a very talented team, especially adding more and creating more depth on the team with Javonte Green and adding DeAndre Hunter as a wing. They're a team that can probably give the Celtics the best battle in the Eastern Conference because you're still in doubt because I've been seeing these games that none of them. It seems like they've really started to figure it out against the Celtics, and all it really takes is to just punch them in the mouth and really just run away with it. It's like I don't. It's the team really just doesn't like when someone steps up to them and really puts that pressure on them. And you had Donovan Mitchell hitting key shots and almost silencing the TD Garden tonight. So it just seemed like the team really lost it in the second quarter once that momentum was lost.
This game was lost off two factors, and it's nothing else other than that. Terrible coaching and terrible bench play. At the end, that is what it is. And the Celtics roster thins out immensely once you lose two of your starters. I mean, this is not a phenomenal bench. I hear it's funny, you hear ESPN, both benches. No, this Celtics bench, outside of Peyton Pritchard, who again is a very hit or miss type of player, this bench is pretty subpar. They have their moments. Al Horford's great. Hauser can be great. But again, in terms of what they have to offer, in terms of stepping up when guys go out, this is a very subpar bench. And then coaching, Joe Mazzulla. You watched Sam Hauser absolutely die out there for 12 minutes, getting picked apart and getting picked on. And you thought to yourself, I'm going to make zero adjustments. That's it. That's what it is, right? Celtics, they didn't have two of their starters, KP and Drew. And Joe Mazzulla sat there and thought to himself, Sam Hauser, this could be good practice to getting bullied. This could be good, right? So it's literally like, do I think Cleveland stands a chance against Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals? Quite frankly, I don't. I don't. I want to see Cleveland get there first before I can even think about that matchup, because right now Boston has two losses to Cleveland, and credit to Cleveland, right? Cleveland played very well. Very well. But at the end of the day, you haven't seen the Celtics team healthy. We haven't seen a healthy matchup. So it's like, how do we know, right? It's like, here we are, no KP, no Drew. We're not just going to ignore that. And then even when Boston beat Cleveland, I believe they had some injuries. They had Okoro, who was a star at the time, out of this. So we just haven't seen these two teams fully healthy matching up with each other. So overall, I think this is a frustrating loss. I mean, Tatum scores 46, Brown scores 37, and you somehow manage to lose the game. That is, I mean, what, in 8 years of watching Brown and Tatum play together, have we ever seen that? No, we haven't. I mean, they were truly phenomenal tonight on the offensive floor, and you just couldn't. You needed something else. You needed someone of those that big three off the bench, right? I say reluctantly right now. You just needed something, and you couldn't get it. So, I mean, for me, guys, you look at this matchup. And if you're a Cavs fan, congratulations. You got the 1 seed. You just beat the hell out of the defending champs on their road, right? I'm not going to discredit what Cleveland did tonight. I won't. That would be unfair to Cleveland. But I am going to look at it and say, well, you know what? Let's see what happens in the playoffs. Last year, the Celtics, they won 0-2 against Denver, and everyone said that was their kryptonite and that the Denver Nuggets were going to be the team that the Celtics couldn't get through. And what happened? Boston didn't even see Denver come playoff time, come to the NBA Finals. So you don't know how these things are going to play out. Maybe Cleveland doesn't even make the Eastern Conference Finals. Maybe Boston doesn't even. So I know it's a crazy hypothetical, but again, when you look at this Cleveland team, and Donovan Mitchell, credit to him, he said it in his postgame interview. They got to do it. They got to prove it, right? You split 4 games in some very, very weird type of game. Seamus, I agree. Like these Boston gets out to lead, and then here comes Cleveland chipping back. It's not I don't suspect that's a very playoff feel. I don't think Boston's just going to run away with these leads every playoff game. I think it's going to be much closer inside the margins. And I don't know, for me, guys, I don't want to say it's a nothing. It's not a nothing game because it's the 1 seed and the 2 seed and you're at home. It's not a nothing game. But if KP and Drew were healthy and this happened, I'd entertain it. And I know maybe that's an excuse, but I mean, like, that's not nothing, right? Like 2 of your 5 starters who are pretty good. It's not nothing.
Well, it's especially not nothing when you made the point of the bench is thin. I mean, think about the Sam Hauser statement you just made in the analyzation. Sam Hauser replaced Drew Holiday in the lineup tonight. Sam Hauser was the starter out there. Al Horford replaced Kristaps Porzingis as a big man. Sam Hauser replaced Drew Holiday, and Drew Holiday is a primary defender on either Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell. Straight up. I was thinking when Drew Holiday was out of this game, I'm going, this is going to be a big matchup for Derek White and Jaylen Brown because now those 2 guys are going to have to step up on Garland and Mitchell and even Jason Tatum as well. When you don't have your primary defender in Drew Holiday on those guys, that's what we have Drew Holiday for. Derek White is more for the offensive end of the floor. Now we know Derek White and Drew Holiday are both 2-way players and can get after it on both ends. But specifically, Drew Holiday is a defensive specialist at this point in his career more than he is an offensive centerpiece for the Boston Celtics.
Right.
But I would even disclaim with this too. Look at the 2 losses between the Cavs and the Celtics losses to the Cavs this season. Both games saw the Boston Celtics missing 2 starters. The first game, it was Jaylen Brown and Derek White. Tonight, it was Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. So in terms of us not really seeing this Cavs-Celtics matchup healthy, I would say between the Cavs and Celtics now, where the Cavs have just acquired DeAndre Hunter, we certainly haven't seen this matchup where it's the new-look Cavs against the healthy Celtics. We technically have not seen that at all, what it would actually look like in a 7-game series. But the rest of the season, we have seen players either miss time, either on both sides, and that does have to play a little bit of a factor in these games. Otherwise, if the Celtics come out 3-1 in this series between the Cavs and Celtics the regular season series, they're feeling a lot better than 2-2 right now. The 2-2 doesn't feel good because it kind of exemplifies the fact of the Cavaliers can beat the Boston Celtics. But here's the thing. Within this matchup, the Celtics have had the leads. I mean, they've had majority of the leads in these matchups. And that's really what, as a Celtics analyst, Celtics fan, whoever is on more of the side of thinking the Celtics are that team over the Cavaliers, which, I mean, is a lot of people still, don't get me wrong, including us. When you look at that, the Celtics, they've just needed to fend off the Cavaliers those 2 times. Otherwise, every single time, the Celtics would have a win. Those other 2 times the Celtics came out with wins, still needed to fend off the Cavaliers, but it's looked the same in pretty well every single game outside of the 2 games in which the Cavaliers actually broke through and came back and came out with wins. And that's a slightly concerning point for the Celtics, but at the same time, there's still some comfortability there with the Boston Celtics, considering they actually were the ones who created that cushion first against the Cavs. And this is all just kind of I will say, in terms of the conversation between the Celtics and Cavs, it's funny how much we talk about it throughout the regular season and what it shows potentially for the playoffs. Number one, you already said it, Rob. They might not even face in the playoffs. But number two, these two teams, whatever just happened in the regular season, it's 2-2. Great. Cavs got 2 games on the Celtics. Great.
Right.
Celtics got 2 games on the Cavs.
Yeah.
None of this is ultimately going to matter come playoff time when
Right.
these two actually face off in a playoff series. And I wouldn't say I would say Cleveland is a threat to the Celtics. I wouldn't say they've surpassed the Celtics in any regard, even with their acquisitions. And that's not what this game can be labeled as, which I know a lot of the national media will try to do that because that's the overreaction they'll give. I mean, they gave it last time when the Cavaliers beat the Celtics in Cleveland. The Celtics beat them a couple weeks. Both scenarios, the Celtics beat them a couple weeks earlier, and then the Cavs come back and win, and it feels like the national media just goes insane about it. But the Celtics, I think in the long run, with their starting lineup fully healthy, you're thinking this could be a scenario in which they actually get up 3-0 in a series or 3-1 in a series. And then after that, it's a tough hill to climb for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And really, at this point in time, we're just not going to be able to see until the playoffs come because even with this series, it's 2-2. It's 2-2 after it. It's 2-2. Even though the Celtics, they've led for the majority of the time, which doesn't really mean anything, but in some regard, it does.
And you know what, though, Seamus, I will say this. I don't think this loss puts any doubt into Boston's head in that locker room. I think what this win for Boston would have done is start to put some doubt in Cleveland's head in that locker room. So I don't think there's any worries, right? Boston still, when it mattered in the playoffs last year, Boston still got the best of them. So I don't think Boston's starting to doubt themselves. Oh, can we beat these guys? I think Cleveland now, and again, this could be dangerous from the Cleveland side of things. They got some confidence now. Oh yeah, they just came into Boston down 25-3 to start the game, and they came back and they got business done, and they did it in a very impressive fashion. So, I think that from that is a little frustrating, right? Because he went tonight, especially how it looked to start, right? 25-3 lead. You got Tatum coming over here, tell him to get the hell out of Boston, right? It felt a big, okay, back to where you guys belong, get under us, right? Like enough of this. And then you gave Cleveland some life now. 2-2, right, is a lot better than 1-3. And if this was a playoff series, it's a best of 3 now, right, with 2 games at home again for Cleveland. So it's very interesting to see how Cleveland responds to this because it's weird. It was a weird game, and to see Tatum play, he got 46, 19, and 9, to see him play like that, and to see Brown put up 37, and just no one else give you anything. And then it was a weird game. But let's take a look at that weird game. You're going to see a weird lead tracker. And a lead tracker I don't like, but a lead tracker I have to show. So let's take a look, guys, at tonight's lead tracker. And again, it's just, Seamus, you've nailed it. It's the story of the Celtics versus the Cavs in the 2024-2025 NBA season. Boston led by as many as 22 points early on in this game, in Cleveland slowly but surely mounted a comeback here into that second quarter halfway through, and Boston eventually took back that lead, expanding that lead to 17 points there early on, right around 4 minutes into that third quarter. And from there, you see the lead tracker slowly tick away until eventually Cleveland took over their first lead of the night with about 8 minutes to play in that fourth quarter, and they never looked back, beating the Boston Celtics tonight, guys. Obviously, again, Boston's biggest lead was 22, Cleveland's being 7, the longest run 11, 1 lead change, and eventually a Celtics loss, guys. Again, you look at this lead tracker, and Seamus, you've mentioned it already in the show. You look at the weird dynamic that has kind of persisted within the Celtics versus Cavaliers matchups, right? Such a heavy leaning side to Boston early on in these games and through 3 quarters. And then here comes Cleveland on an avalanche led by Donovan Mitchell. Is this a playoff look, or is this a classic regular season matchup where runs really dictate the game?
Well, for me, I feel like things are going to look a lot different in the playoffs, just from how each game is played, and just in terms of the intensity. Because these games, the Celtics, it felt like their intensity fell off in each and every game. It really did. It felt like the Celtics came out with energy, came out with intensity, and this has been a theme from really not only individual games for the Boston Celtics this year, but really in stretches where Well, we definitely know from January the Celtics would come out one game with intensity and then the next game have no energy whatsoever. And that kind of is how these big games feel for the Boston Celtics in the regular season. It feels like for a part of the game they get it done, and then the rest of the game they kind of just kick their feet back and sit
Right.
around and wait for the win. And then sometimes they're overcame, and other times they're able to just really squeak out these games. But then in the playoffs, I think there has to be much more of an awareness and assertion towards being that team that plays the full 48 minutes, because these games the Celtics, they play well in half the game. You look at the lead tracker, there's a 22-point lead in there, there's a 17-point lead in there, and those are early in the two games. I will say, well, I kind of look at a game as two games sometimes, in terms of the first half is your first game. You want to win the first half, and in the second half it's a whole new ball game. I mean, even at halftime the Celtics had a 10-point lead, but I don't think anybody thought the game was over at that point the way it was going. And the Celtics, they surmount a 22-point lead early in the game. Well, the Cavs are going to come back. They've been able to come back against us all season long, even with big leads at the beginning of the game. Plus, this Cavaliers team, they're one of the best offensive teams in the league, if not the best offensive team. And they've been putting up points all season long. You knew this Cavaliers team had offense in them, a lot more possessions in them, and you knew they were going to come back in this game. So that 22-point lead wasn't safe, as we saw in the first half. But then the Celtics, they go up by 17 in that third quarter, and it looks like, oh, smooth sailing from there. And it's anything but, as the Cavaliers come back yet again. And I thought it was the Celtics really just becoming complacent both times in their play, because I thought in the first half specifically, the Celtics went away from what was ultimately causing them success early on in the game, which was really penetrating the paint, driving the ball, kicking out, making the extra pass, and finding those open shots. I felt like as the game went along, they started to kind of jack up shots just a bit there. And ultimately the Celtics, they can't be doing all that jacking out there. They really can't. They just cannot be doing it. And we've seen it, and we've talked about it many times this season, but that the Celtics, they just can't do it. And what happened was the Celtics started to fall off in terms of the shooting category just a bit. Now they actually shot a fair number on the night. Now Cleveland ended up shooting a lot better than the Boston Celtics, but the Cavs and the Celtics, I should mention the Celtics, on the night they were 48.3% from the floor. So they shot almost 50%. They shot 43.6% from three. The Cavaliers, on the other hand, they shot in the upper 40s as well, or low 40s for three. And from that, the Boston Celtics, they shot well in this game. They could not necessarily get consistent stops. And even I thought some of the shots they were taking at certain points in the game, they just weren't good shots. You saw good shots for those runs where you see the 22-point lead, the 17-point lead. The Celtics actually shot the ball well, but then for the rest of the game, it was few and far between. Plus, defensively, they couldn't really get stops. But what's a real surprising point about this game, and it really exemplifies the bench thinning out once you have two starters out, is Brown and Tatum. I have not seen a performance out of Brown and Tatum this large. 46 from Tatum, 37 from Jaylen Brown. They were almost the player spotlights tonight. Those two players I've never seen go off in such a manner and lose a game like this. I mean, I really thought we were going to come in here and just give out a million flowers, a million praises, a million hearts out there. A million hearts. No, these hearts, well, Brown
Get away.
get them. Other people get them tonight. I'm just saying. But ultimately, I really do believe that I've never seen a game like this where Brown and Tatum go off and the opponent is coming out with a win. Yet that's what we saw tonight, because really no one else on the Celtics roster was there to step up. But I will say, in terms of saying no one else, Derek White, he did have 16 points on the night. Outside of him, nobody in double figures. 6 points for Peyton Pritchard, way below his standard. 5 points for Al Horford, 6 for Sam Hauser. And then the rest give you zero. Cornette, Drew Peterson, Torrey Craig. Peterson and Torrey Craig really not factors whatsoever tonight. But that really exemplifies the bench thinning out, because you have Brown and Tatum scoring the way they do, 46 and 37. nobody else gives you any help. But if you look at everybody else, who is supposed to give you help? Because Derek White had 16 tonight. Now, Sam Hauser, you would expect to step up a little bit more because he hit those 2 early shots. He didn't really do anything the rest of the game. And it's surprising now when Sam Hauser only gives you 6 points, because that's been the kind of player he is this season. He hasn't been that 10-point per game scorer as he was last year. He's
Right.
been down in those depths. He hasn't been hitting shots. So really, after Derek White, you have Brown, Tatum, Derek White. Who else is giving you points? I mean, you expect Pritchard. If Pritchard's not on, which he hasn't been on some occasions this year, who else is giving you points? Because you're looking at Hauser, you're looking at Horford. They don't really do anything, and when they do, they get major praise for doing it. And you just look at the rest of the roster for the Boston Celtics in this game. That's why it's such a big deal that Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis were out of this game. It's because the rest of the roster, outside of Brown and Tatum, who had phenomenal games, didn't give you anything. And you really, if you're the Boston Celtics, all the players you're looking to aren't really those type of players who are going to go out there and replace scoring numbers. And that's why Brown and Tatum had such big nights. And ultimately, why the Celtics just were missing a gear in this game at a certain point in time when they just didn't have anyone else but Brown and Tatum out there to go and take on the offensive load. So just an extraordinarily weird game all around, because you lose this game, you're up and you feel good. Brown and Tatum have great nights. And from that perspective, you go, okay, well, we're certainly equipped to go beat the Cavaliers in the playoffs. But you don't really like the taste of, oh, the Cavaliers, they're able to really get back into these games. The Celtics, no matter what kind of cushion they create against the Cavs, no matter if it's a 22-point early lead, the Cavaliers have shown their ability to come back in these games. And that's why that's why health is going to be so important for the Boston Celtics when they enter the playoffs and throughout the rest of this regular season, just in general, because you see once some of these guys go out at the top, it's getting a little thin for the Boston Celtics, and it's getting a little dicey in terms of who they can actually throw out there to replace some of the scoring numbers, just some of the production numbers from the players who are out. Tonight, I think the Celtics fell victim to that. And actually, in terms of Brown and Tatum, they reaped the benefit of that from their points out there. But everything else for the Boston Celtics just wasn't working as it normally was.
Right.
Or rather is.
Even to piggyback off that, when we were pointing out that Sam Hauser was out there getting picked apart, Joe really didn't have any much other options to point to on that bench to
You gotta try something though. You gotta try something.
Yeah, or he try to mask it with his own defense, or try to something. There is something you can pull off. And one thing that the Celtics haven't been known for doing is really making those halftime adjustments. And like Joe Mazzulla says, he wishes that halftime was abolished, and he would just be able to stay out there and be ready to go back out there and keep playing. And it's something challenging, and that the Celtics have been dealing with is especially the depth, and it's going to be something to look out for when we're rounding near playoffs. If that you see Kristaps Porzingis or Drew Holiday out for 2 or 3 games, that can put the Celtics at a serious disadvantage and could put them in a tough situation. And something I pointed out, and to correlate this to MVP debate with Jason Tatum, as he was ranked number 3rd behind Jokic and SGA. He had a great opportunity. So did Jaylen Brown, to really put this team on their back and carry them through. But they both had great performances. Jaylen Brown was helping out on the defensive end, and Jason Tatum was also doing a great job of rebounding with the lack of Kristaps. But being able to finish out these games is needs to happen, especially when you're facing the Cleveland Cavaliers. Tonight was a very momentous game, and when if you end up facing the Cleveland Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference Finals, assuming that Cleveland's 1 and we're number 2 when it comes to playoff time, there's going to be almost more even feeling within the Cavaliers
Right.
to be able to match up with them and say, okay, we can go with these guys. We can silence their home floor, and if there's a mismatch on the court, the Cavaliers are a much more in-depth team. If the Celtics had some Max Bruces on the bench, that would be helpful. They're they were able to develop keep these guys around, and it's kind of reminiscent of a few years back when the Celtics were able to have Grant Williams and either Al Horford or Robert Williams on the bench. You had a lot more to rely on, and you could give your players some rest and have some insurance when you have someone sitting out.
Right, but it's like the bench works, right, when the team's healthy. The bench they play off of each other so well that's when it works. The problem with the bench isn't necessarily a talent problem. I know I called him a little subpar earlier. It's once their roles increase, they can't match that, right? And I give you credit. Like Grant Williams, if there's one thing he could do, he could match a little bit higher of a role. If he needs to step into the starting lineup, he could kind of step in and match that. This bench can't really do that. They are very, very talented at doing what they need to do, right? When Sam Hauser needs to check in for 8 minutes or 6 minute stint and knock down a couple threes, he can do that when they're healthy, right? And when he's getting wide open looks off of a Kristaps post up or a Tatum drive, or the ball's swinging because they got attention over on Brown and then Tatum and then White, and then there's an open 40% 3-point shooter in Hauser. They're good in their roles. Tonight they were asked to do more, and I'm a little disappointed because they need to be able to do more. Cornette, Pritchard, Hauser, Horford, they have been good. They have shown they are capable of playing in these types of games. To see them crumble the way they did tonight, it was putrid. And I have to dig into Joe Mazzulla tonight. And he gave a good quote at the end of the game. He was asked, what happened, and he says, "We all have to be better. The coaches have to be better. The players have to be better. I have to be better. The adjustments have to be better." And you're absolutely right, Joe. You were terrible tonight. And that's not me calling him a bad coach and asking for him to be fired and saying this and that, which so many people assume you're saying when you call out the coach for a bad coaching game. You're allowed to have these. But Joe, you needed to go somewhere else. It was obvious and clear that Cleveland was making a comeback and they were chipping away at the lead. The Celtics shot 29%, guys, from 3 in the second half. It wasn't working. It wasn't there. And Cleveland clearly made an adjustment. They steered away from Jared Allen. They had noticed Tatum was eating him alive and getting everything he wanted through that screen action, that high pick and roll that they love to do. In getting a bigger defender, a slower defender on Tatum, they adjusted and they went somewhere else. They went small. They ran Mobley at the 5. Joe Mazzulla just looked at the starters and, okay, you guys started the game. You're going to finish the game. You can't do that, Joe. You cannot do that. Dean Wade did not start for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he found crucial minutes towards the end. They knew what they needed to do in order to win that game. Joe Mazzulla, you didn't have any clue what you needed to do to win this game without your 5 starters here. And I am a little disappointed with Joe Mazzulla tonight, and a little frustrated because you're too far in to your coaching tenure now to not pick up on these things. I don't think it's going to be the end all be all for the Boston Celtics come playoff time. I think Joe is more than capable of putting together a well-schemed series. However, I do have to doubt his ability to make in-game adjustments because, guys, I'm sorry. Tonight, it was what you needed. A Brad Stevens special was when 2 starters are out. Ooh, in-game adjustment time. What player have I been saving in my back pocket to match what we need? And, they're playing Mobley. Well, guess what? All right, Nemi, you're up. All right, Craig, come on, let's go. I'm ready for this. He was ready for that. And, again, coaches have different strengths, different weaknesses, but Joe, guys, tonight, I mean, to watch, I'm sitting there and I'm just sitting there like this, just watching Sam Hauser get left on an island. If you want to play Sam, okay, maybe send 2, get the ball out of Mitchell's hands so he can't pick apart and get to the basket every time. And it's more than just Joe. I'm not putting 100% of the blame on Joe. That would be unfair. I agree. They needed to rebound better. I thought Tatum and Brown got really ISO-centric towards the end, guys. But I want to hear your thoughts a little bit on Joe Mazzulla because, quite frankly, it was a disaster class tonight from Joe.
Well, Joe Mazzulla, I think in this game, if you look at some of the minutes by the players out there, I mean, I would have liked to see Torrey Craig a lot more. Because Torrey Craig is a new addition, and you can't tell me at this point in time, with almost zero practice under the team's belt with him on the roster, that you know what you're getting out of Torrey Craig. I mean, he's almost a wild card out there. And what we saw from Sam Hauser, why not throw Torrey Craig into the game? And I'm tired of seeing Sam Hauser out on the floor, period. I'm just tired of it because he's proven to be a player who has clearly fallen off from his best skill, in which we attribute to himself, which is hitting that three ball, coming off of screens, hitting that three ball, standing in the corner, just hitting that three. If you're Sam Hauser, if he's not hitting that three, what is he doing out there? Because defensively, he's picked apart by players smaller than him. And I when I hear on the Celtics broadcast, Sam Hauser, better defender, but his frame is a little misleading. But
what are you watching
right now? Really not right now. I mean, really, I don't know what's going on with what they're watching. I don't know what's going on with Sam Hauser this season. Sam Hauser's been terrible, both defensively and offensively. And at some point, you have to look at a guy like Jordan Walsh or Torrey Craig and go, you know what? These two guys are wild card forwards. You might get something out of them. You might get nothing. But what are you getting out of Sam Hauser? It's not nothing. It's negative at this moment in time. It's negative. And to me, just playing him continuously and thinking, I look at the roster and I go, okay, well, off the bench is clearly Horford and Pritchard. And Horford's your seventh man because Pritchard is your sixth man out there and sixth man of the year candidate. Well, after that, who's your eighth guy? It's automatically seen as Sam Hauser every single time. Automatically, Sam Hauser, Sam Hauser, Sam Hauser. Now. Well, yeah, I would actually agree with that. You could say Cornette, but Sam Hauser is right there as a player, specifically as a forward player, because Cornette and Horford, they're both bigs. And then you have Pritchard as a guard. You're one forward off the bench. It's Sam Hauser, Sam Hauser, Sam Hauser. At some point, we have to go and play Jordan Walsh. We have to go and play Torrey Craig. We have to potentially play Baylor Shireman at times because Sam Hauser, he's not looking like a legitimate option to lean on come playoff time for major minutes. Not that he would get a ton, but in terms of the plug-and-play minutes, like you were saying, Rob, a couple 6 minutes here, 8 minutes there, can you come in and hit some shots? It's looking impossible for Sam Hauser right now because what he gives you defensively is a negative out there, while offensively is giving you nothing, which a negative plus a nothing equals a negative. And that's where Sam Hauser is right now. That's one of the biggest mistakes Joe Mazzulla is making out on the floor. It's just not playing other players over Sam Hauser. And I'm not usually a Joe Mazzulla defender or anything like that. And I actually think this is a detriment to him because of what you kind of mentioned with Brad Stevens, where it's, your two starters out. You have to go to your X's and O's and kind of find something within your rotations, kind of shift it up to really get through the game. Joe Mazzulla is not good at that, but I will disclaim tonight, didn't have much to work with off the bench whatsoever when two starters were out, but that can be looked at in two ways in terms of either one way, didn't have much to work with, so what can you really work with? But number two, if you don't have much to work with, well, you have to make the most out of what you have, and Joe Mazzulla just has not been good at that in his Celtics tenure, and tonight it really showed itself yet again. And I don't want to make a conclusion on Joe Mazzulla, obviously, on game 50 or 60 of the season here, because that's always led to just
right. No,
in the past.
Right. There's no assumptions. He was just bad.
He was just terrible. Like the conclusion here is not a long-term conclusion because that's what we always talk about with Mazzulla. But tonight and in these situations, he's terrible. He's just terrible. And that's the bottom line with Joe Mazzulla right now.
Like, Franco, I'm so sorry. Before you go, I gotta say it again. Like it is unfair to Sam Hauser. You deserve to give Sam Hauser a formal apology because you let that man die out there on national television and get picked on and get bullied. Because, oh my God, did you not watch him in every situation, Joe? I'm starting to get mad now. Just get, coming down the floor for the entire fourth quarter. What did I was sitting there saying, all right, here comes the action to Sam. Oh, there's the ISO. Sam Hauser's responsibility on the floor should never, ever, ever, ever be to be in isolation play with Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland. It's unfair to Sam Hauser and it's unfair to the team. The fact that Joe Mazzulla sat there and let that happen is disgraceful in my opinion. At home against the 1 seed with Jason Tatum putting up a historic performance. We have never seen a Celtic put up a performance like this. And Joe Mazzulla absolutely sat on his hands tonight and did absolutely nothing about just what was happening out there to Sam Hauser. And it felt like I was watching a 12-year-old get bullied by upperclassmen. It was terrible, guys. Oh my God, Franco, I'm sorry. It was so bad though. So
It's also like,
bad.
why did we sign Torrey Craig? I'm so confused. To play him a minute and a half in this situation when 2 starters are out?
I think he
what are
should
we
have
doing
started tonight. Tonight would have been
I
a
agree.
great
No,
chance for
stop
him
with
to
Sam.
start.
Oh,
Yeah, even if he wasn't working out, you still could have had him play like 10, 15 minutes instead of Sam Hauser trying to fill in. And when you have Sam Hauser on the court and there's no other options, and you see the team fully picking on Sam Hauser, those need to be adjustments that can be called when Sam Hauser is still on the court and you don't have someone to replace him with. You just need to make sure that people are sticking to their man when those screens come along, and switch it Brown off of Mitchell or Garland, and you need to make sure that Sam Hauser is almost away from those types of situations where he can be picked on. You need to put him down by the wing. You need to be able to just have him be an extra person putting a hand up and on one of the corners and covering the baseline. That's where Sam Hauser plays, and usually that's where there's absolutely no problem with that, because you'll usually have Drew Holiday able to pick up on those types of situations. But there's going to be situations where you're not going to have Drew Holiday, so you have to
where you're not
have
fortunate
that
enough to
answer.
have 5
Yeah.
all-stars, right? Like,
Yeah,
you actually
you
have to
gotta find
coach.
out. Yeah, you have to find out what's going to work for you. You have to be able to find those momentum moments and call those timeouts and assign those plays where you know that you're going to have your best player matched up against their best player. Donovan Mitchell put on an absolute performance tonight in TD Garden, especially during the fourth quarter, and that's just not something you can allow with the coaching adjustments. It's almost, you should have had either Tatum or Brown to take over those types of positions, and I'm just mind blown that this game was just completely underplays the Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum performance they had
It's a
tonight.
disgrace. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. I'm going to say it one more time. It's a disgrace.
Because this is probably one of the best performances we've seen in their careers on the court at the same time together.
Oh.
And,
Oh my God.
it has a big L next to it.
I mean, and I get it, right? Because again, Mazzulla was asked post game as well about the Sam Hauser situation, because everyone, I guess, saw it in the building besides everyone in the world saw it besides Joe Mazzulla. And I get it. You have confidence in your players, and I can respect that, right? Joe's got a lot of strength in his ability to coach the players and be behind them and bring them up. I get it. You have confidence in it. Okay, let's go, Sam. You got the switch on this possession. You got it. Okay, you didn't. Okay, right. Like, I get it. You have confidence. Donovan Mitchell, however, is one of the league's premier scorers. It is what he does in his sleep. And he loves scoring buckets against the Boston Celtics. Believe it or not, I believe he's second all-time in points per game against the Boston Celtics in his career, right behind Michael Jordan. The dude loves scoring against the Boston Celtics, and he loves doing it at TD Garden. So in a close game in the fourth quarter, I get it. Confidence, bring your players up, have the belief in them. That's a great quality to have as a coach, right? Not many coaches have it. But if I'm Kenny Atkinson, I'm sitting over there and I'm looking, and it's like, okay, we got the switch. Okay, you're going to adjust? Oh, no, he's not. Okay, do it again. He's going to adjust. Whoa, do it again. It's like, you almost think it's like, it's just, again, it's unfair to Sam. I know I've said it, and it was just bad. And I agree with you guys. Where was Craig tonight, Seamus, right? You signed this guy. He's we talk about versatility. He's got much more versatility. He can shoot the ball pretty well. He can muck the game up a little bit. Switchability is there. You don't love the matchup against Mitchell, right? But maybe, muck the game up. It was a disaster class. And really, it's not something you can look at. And again, it's like the thing that upsets it for me, that makes this really frustrating, isn't that it was Cleveland, it was the 1 seed, it was really just what Tatum and Brown were doing on the floor. They deserved to have a chance. They deserved to win this game. And they didn't get that from the rest of the locker room. And the rest of the locker room's got to be a little frustrated with themselves. And I'm sure they are. And I'm sure this is in the grand scheme of things. We're going to look back on this season, and hopefully this game really is more of just, damn, we lost when Jason Tatum and Brown played well. But it's a little frustrating. And honestly, it is a little worrisome. A little, not a whole lot, just that Joe would let it get that bad, and there wasn't an adjustment. And because what if in a playoff series you don't have Drew and Sam, you do put Sam out there? So, no defensive adjustments. He allowed those guys to die out there. Let's talk about the man who we haven't been able to stop talking about, because honestly, guys, this was, in my opinion, and again, it's so frustrating they lost. In my opinion, probably, Franco, you said it. Seamus, you've said it too. Probably the best, and I'm sorry, JB, we couldn't get you up there as well, but probably the best Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown performance together that we've seen since they've come here, guys. So the SeatGeek player spotlight is none other than the man himself, Jason Tatum. Before we talk about Jason Tatum, I do want to say, guys, the Boston Celtics, despite the loss, the playoffs are right around the corner, and they're starting to heat up, and things are going well for the Celtics. Don't let tonight fool you, guys. And there is no better ticket app out there to use on the market than SeatGeek, guys. SeatGeek has you covered for all live sporting events and all live events in your area. If you're on the travel, you can go check out the Celtics on the move, guys. Use code Celtics Weekly at checkout for $20 off your first purchase. The link will be down there in the description down below, guys. However, again, big shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring this post-game show. Let's talk about what Jason Tatum did tonight. 46 points, 16 rebounds, 9 assists, 3 blocks, shooting just over 50% from the floor. Guys, he had 30 of his 46 in the first half. He was an absolute flamethrower out there alongside his running mate, Jaylen Brown, who put out 37. We talk about Jason Tatum performances, and we talk about how great he is. And we're not going to not talk about that because he is great. A night like this is going to be overshadowed by this loss, guys. But to me, it felt like if Boston had won this game, this was the game where you look at Jason Tatum and that MVP stock skyrockets. Do you think this game affects his MVP stock still, or does the loss kind of strip away of its meaning?
The loss strips it away. Strips it away.
Yeah, negated.
You got to win these games if they're going to mean anything for your MVP campaign. I think that's just straightforward on the MVP. Most valuable player value is in the wins and how much winning percentage you bring to your team. And when you don't win ball games, we've seen so many times in the past, and even in the recent years, this recent year, if you don't win ball games, you're not looked upon in a good light by either the media, coaches, whoever, players out there. I mean, look at LaMelo Ball. He was top 5 in scoring this year at All-Star break, yet didn't make the All-Star game and wasn't even a replacement. Trae Young ended up being the replacement in the East for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and it wasn't LaMelo Ball. And he's been a player who we've looked at in the past and gone, well, he's a great scorer, great offensive player, putting up all these big numbers, but he can't defend, and his team never wins ball games. He's always a perpetual player down even below the play-in marks of the lottery. And that just doesn't put him in the running for All-NBA and all these other great NBA awards. And that has to really be a standard for every single player out there, is your team has to win. You have to make your team better. And not saying Jason Tatum doesn't make his team better, because we all know what Jason Tatum does to the Boston Celtics. And even without Jason Tatum, this could have been a much different story for the Celtics tonight. It could have been a blowout loss for the Boston Celtics. But 46 points, 16 rebounds, 9 assists, 1 assist shy from a triple-double, 19 of 37 from the floor, and he was getting after it on both ends of the floor. Jason Tatum was. None of it matters because it didn't lead to what was the objective of the game, which was winning the ball game. And that's where it's just unfortunate for the Celtics. That's one of the most unfortunate pieces of this entire game, is not only the loss. The loss came in an occasion where Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown both went off, both had great games. And that's something we've been talking about for a good majority of the season is, Brown will be on one game and then Tatum will be on another game. And it's mostly been Tatum this year more than Brown. But if both of these guys could get going, that's when this team could be just absolutely unstoppable. Well, we saw both these guys get going tonight. Nobody else contributed whatsoever. And the Boston Celtics come out with the loss. So that is easily one of the most disappointing points of this entire game, is Tatum's performance, Brown's performance, and the Celtics' result in the end, because the individual performances we've seen in the past, whether it's Luke Kornet, Peyton Pritchard, they put up 20 points a game or they put around 15 points up. Oh yeah, great, they had a great performance, but if it doesn't lead to a win, what did you even do? You went out there and had some cardio and came out with an L. Didn't achieve the objective whatsoever. So this game for the Celtics just super disappointing, especially considering the opponent, the way it was lost, and on top of it, Brown and Tatum's just stellar performance in which will not be presented anywhere other than, oh, wow, what a great matchup against Donovan Mitchell, who also had an awesome game and then, of course, won the game in the end. That's the only place it's going to be seen is up against Donovan Mitchell's numbers, who actually came out with the win tonight with the Cavs.
I've already seen the headlines on ESPN that it's completely wiped out, negated, and almost buried to a point. But tonight you saw how good Jason Tatum can be when he needs to carry a team. And a point that I actually made before, like midday today, to the rest of our crew was, I don't think it's going to be immediate success for Jason Tatum to get that MVP award and regular season MVP award. It's going to have to come with the fact that there is less talent around him, and he needs to show up and had the stats and really load the scoreboard for the team. And likewise with Jaylen Brown. And tonight was an example of that happening where you needed someone to step up. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum both did a phenomenal job, both getting to their areas. Jaylen Brown was collecting rebounds down low on the offensive side for the first half, and whenever the Celtics were able to get that momentum going, you saw them mucking it up in the paint in the early third quarter. And once those adjustments and rotations had to come in to rest those players, that's when you started to see it all slip away again. And it's very, like we've been saying, very frustrating to see a team, two of your great players put up such an amazing, productive effort, and on both ends really put 128% out on the floor just to come up short and not be able to capitalize at the end of this game. And even in the final moments of tonight's game, there could have been better adjustments, better game plans, better calls to really get those guys set up, and also not help alleviate that stress and pressure on Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who had to carry everything. And obviously they had no problem with that. But if you got any type of contribution from Sam Hauser or an Al Horford to be able to put a couple more points on the board and redirect the defensive focus off of those two players, and they weren't going to be the ones reliable for every shot going up. And that's when you started to see Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum starting to force looks and not feel comfortable. And obviously they pushed for this win all the way through, and there were just a few plays that could have went a different way, especially in the final 2 minutes. But just a really unfortunate game for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to have such a great performance.
It was the MVP. I was sitting there thinking, oh, wow, Tatum actually's got a shot at the MVP. This win for Tatum on the 46-point triple-double, nearly, in a win against the 1 seed, just down KP and Drew. At this late in the season, after being already moved up to 3? Are you kidding me? You might see Tatum at 2 next week with a game. The first, I mean, a stat line that you have never seen in the rich Celtic history. I mean, you've had some great players put on a uniform for the Celtics, and no one's done what Jason Tatum did tonight. But Seamus said it. Franco, you said it. They lost. Goes out the window, and it's a shame. But also, I will say, you know, this isn't the best version of the Celtics, and it was clear because the Celtics are at their best when Tatum's not scoring in bunches like this. And he had 7 of those 9 assists in the first half, guys, and that to me tells me the tale of the two halves. Cleveland eventually kind of caught on, and they were like, oh, okay, well, hold on, Tatum. It's okay if Tatum beats us when he does, but we can't let him get open guys. And You know, he was getting Pritchard open, White open, Hauser hit a three early in that, or two, I believe, early in that second quarter. And that's when they were moving, is when Tatum was moving the ball around. Cleveland picked up on that and they said, you know what, we're going to isolate. We're okay with isolation against Tatum as long as the other guys around us aren't going to beat us. We're okay with that. And, you know, credit to them. But from a Jason Tatum standpoint, I mean, this was one of the better games I've seen out of him. And this is who he is. That's what he can do. Right. When there are no options, when Porzingis and Drew are out and the roster demands Jason Tatum to shoot the ball a lot and to take over the game, this is what Tatum could do. This could be a regular thing for obviously 46, 16, and 9, you know, not that, you know, that stat line, but that's how good Tatum is. That's how dominant he is. And it's a shame that it was wasted on what could have been such a historic night. And it was a shame that it was thrown out the window, guys, but also Jaylen Brown. Brown was phenomenal offensively tonight, and to see the two of them do it, and I know there's a stat out there, and I don't know it off the top of my head. I believe the Celtics, when Tatum and Brown both score over 30, I believe this is their third loss in their history of their tenure together. I believe the second loss was last season, also against Cleveland. So, again, something we've seen before, a dynamic. I know it's a little small, minute detail. Excuse me, my throat, super dry. Gosh, one second. Apologize about that. But a minute detail, but an interesting dynamic nonetheless. But again, guys, so I guess, you know, pivoting a little bit off Tatum, more so onto Brown, you know, to see Brown dominate, come out the gate like this, defend, and I know there was some back and forth in the Celtics Talk Weekly group chat, no names given, you know, confidential, but do we think Brown defensively was fully there? And I hate to get negative because Brown offensively was dominant. We're going to touch on that, but just real quick, Tatum was great on both ends. I'm interested because not many people, you know, talked about it. Was Brown fully there defensively? Because I thought he was.
I think at times you could definitely say Jaylen Brown wasn't all there defensively, but I think there are some players on the Boston Celtics and even just in the league in general who sometimes get picked on more than others. And you're not going to be 100% great defensively all the time.
Exactly.
When you're defending, you're going to give up some points out there on an NBA court. It's just about consistent effort. And there are some guys who are just crazy and have been crazy in time with that. We think of somebody like PJ Tucker, who at his height never gave up on a defensive possession. We know here in Boston, Marcus Smart never gave up on a defensive possession, but guys like Jaylen Brown and even Jason Tatum, I'll highlight him too. There are moments in which they're a little lackadaisical on the defensive end of the floor. And I'll even point out guys like Drew Holiday and Derek White. I know Drew Holiday didn't play tonight, but Derek White did. If those guys are getting complacent on the defensive end of the floor, that's when we see the Celtics defense really fall off within a game. And it has happened a couple of times this season. I thought at stretches in this game, the defense was not as intense as they were early on in the game. You saw early on they were getting deflections, getting out in transition, running, and getting easy buckets, whether it was by the rim, on the fast break, or just those really spread out corner threes or those wing threes that they were getting in transition early on when the pace was up within the game. As the game went along, Celtics became a little bit stagnant, stopped getting those deflections, stopped running in transition, didn't have as many of those opportunities out there, and that can really stem from the defensive end a lot of the times. And the Celtics, when they become complacent on that end, that's where they can get in trouble. And I thought there were a couple of moments, particularly late in the game, and we already talked about it with the rotations, where the Celtics defensively just completely fell asleep. That could be either from a player's perspective or it could be from a coach's perspective, like we saw with Sam Hauser. And I do want to make the point on Sam Hauser again is Sam Hauser out there on the floor. I don't like to see him out there late in the fourth quarter like he was. I don't like to see him out there as consistently as he's been. But on a night like tonight, where you're missing your primary defender on Garland and Mitchell, which is Drew Holiday, and you're missing a very substantial defender down low in Kristaps Porzingis, there is a lot of places in which the Boston Celtics off the bench become really thin and vulnerable from the standpoint of not only from an offensive perspective, like we saw with the points tonight, a lot of them going to Brown and Tatum, but defensively too. I think other teams, they really see a weakness within the Boston Celtics they can finally exploit. If Kristaps Porzingis and Drew Holiday are out there eating up minutes, both of those guys are guys you don't exactly want to pick on. I mean, Kristaps Porzingis, he's 7'3", can kind of stay with guys if he's really engaged defensively, and he can really use his length to deter a shot on the perimeter are really down low by the rim, whether it's a guy driving or pulling up at his face. Kristaps can always use that 7'3" length and that versatility from his game to deter shots. Well, Drew Holiday, he's the primary defender on some of the best players we're seeing as opponents to the Boston Celtics, are really best guards, I will add in as well. And that's really the case with the Cavaliers with Garland and Mitchell. And when you take both those guys out, you start replacing them with vulnerable players in Al Horford and Sam Hauser. Both of those players are players that Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland can pick on. And after that, the bench, you're looking at Cornette. Cornette is a player who can be picked on. Peyton Pritchard is a player who can be picked on. So you're starting to look at a bunch of guys who defensively are really not holding a candle to what you're taking out defensively in Drew and Kristaps Porzingis. And even go and look at that other Cavs matchup where Donovan Mitchell torched the Boston Celtics in the fourth quarter back in early December. Well, who was missing that game? It was Jaylen Brown and Derek White. And in that situation, we saw guys like Drew Peterson, who Drew Peterson actually played a little bit of a role at a certain point tonight. Drew Peterson, he was in that game against Cleveland long ago, and the Celtics, they were bringing out options to the floor, and that was the game where we really looked at it and went, wow, the Celtics at that point in time could not win without Jason Tatum out there on the floor, but they were missing two starters that game. They were missing two starters tonight, and you just see the bench become extremely thin. You see the team become extremely vulnerable from a defensive perspective just because the Cavaliers simply now have options with either Kristaps and Drew out of the lineup, or beforehand, whether it was Jaylen Brown and Derek White, if those guys are out of the lineup. And then, of course, we were talking about Jason Tatum exiting the floor just to sit down in that first Cavs game. It starts to become a matchup where the Cavaliers can actually exploit and pick apart the Boston Celtics in multiple ways. And that's really where we're looking at it and going, the Celtics, if that happens to them later on in the season, that's why health is going to be so important for the Boston Celtics in making this run. Is if the Celtics don't, they're not fully healthy, they're all of a sudden a team that other opponents can exploit. Like the Cavaliers, they're going to be able to exploit the Boston Celtics if they're down a man or two. And from that perspective, the Celtics are a lot more vulnerable of a team later on in time without those players. And even in these games, they drop those Cavs games with the two starters out. And that's where the Celtics just lose their biggest strength is defensively. The Celtics, they do not have multiple players that other teams are looking to pick on when they're fully healthy. Yet when there are one or two starters out, like we saw tonight, the bench just both offensively, that's where it's going to be looked at the most because of the bench points and just the points in general outside of Brown and Tatum. But defensively, it starts to become a lineup in which the Celtics cannot throw out there consistently and feel comfortable with, as Joe Mazzulla we saw tonight. Couldn't find that rhythm within lineups, and when he did, it just wasn't a lineup in which could go out there and win against the Cleveland Cavaliers, particularly on the defensive end of the floor.
Right, which is why it was such a weird dynamic too tonight, because here you have Boston jump out to this super early lead, and you kind of look at it and you think to yourself, oh wow, okay, like here we are up 22 points early on in this game. They can actually do this, they can actually win. And then here comes Cleveland, the game kind of levels out a little bit, and then Cleveland goes on a run, and then Boston kind of pushes out again. But Cleveland came back, obviously, eventually winning. So it's like, in a game in which you figure, okay, you're down two starters, you probably shouldn't, you can hang around, but you probably aren't going to walk away with a win. It would be very impressive if you did. But they were there. And I think that's what's so frustrating about it, and kind of has been with the previous loss too, is you were up, right? Like, yes, we know starters, but you did hold a lead, and there was a path to victory tonight. And Boston, unfortunately, felt like they steered off the right path, and they had the right path. But, a little bump in the road hit, and then they just kind of went out of control and spun out and hit a tree. And that's essentially kind of, and I agree, defensively, Cleveland exploited us. And it's what happens when you lose two guys. So that is why injury is important. But I have a question, like, why didn't I understand Holiday, right? He was out due to that, like the hammer finger, right in the front of the tip. They explained it on the right. What's it called? Mallet finger, hammer finger,
mallet, yeah,
mallet. And then
mallet finger, Dr. Salters.
What was up with Porzingis though? Like, why wasn't he in the lineup tonight?
I'm looking at both players and thinking, why weren't they in the lineup tonight? I was thinking originally, oh well. Maybe this is a little bit of a this is going to be so conspiratorial, just saying. Maybe in the fourth matchup against the Cavs, knowing, see this where the conspiracy is coming. Joe Mazzulla isn't a great
different
adjustment coach, right? And Kenny Atkinson is. Maybe the Celtics, they go, well, we're going to save ourselves for the playoffs here.
I was thinking that. I didn't want to say it because I was thinking it though.
We're not going to give you guys the luxury of playing all 5 of our starters and our top 6. We're not going to give you guys the luxury of playing Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis and having film on those 2 guys and having a game plan against our top 5 starters. We're just going to throw that out to you at the playoffs. And within these 4 games in the regular season, 2 of them were so early in the season to the point where those can almost be thrown away. But then these 2 games, yes, the Celtics have everybody out there for the Cleveland game, in Cleveland, I should say, a couple of weeks ago. Tonight, without everybody else out there, this all of a sudden becomes film in which the Cavs and the Celtics can throw away in time, because if all 5 starters are healthy for the Boston Celtics in the playoffs, this type of film isn't going to matter. You're going to look at this film and go, oh, we want to exploit this matchup. We want to go here. We want to go there. But then when the rotations look entirely different with Kristaps and Drew Holiday later on down the line, some of the game planning looks a little bit different as well. So that's where I almost become conspiratorial with this and go, well, maybe the Celtics, they didn't want to give the Cavs the luxury of giving themselves a look against all 5 Celtics starters tonight. So that's where my first thought went. But then you see Drew Holiday there on the bench with a splint around his finger, and they're talking about how it's an injury in which your ligament connecting your fingers, right, tears, which all of a sudden I'm going, wait a minute. So Drew Holiday has a ligament tear in his shooting hand on his pinky, right? And that's why it's called mallet finger or whatever it's called, because your finger starts drooping down because it can't hold itself upright because that ligament is torn. Well, they gave that out quite casually. The Celtics and the ESPN broadcast gave it out quite casually. And I actually look at that injury. Forget the shoulder stuff we were talking about with Drew Holiday before All-Star break. I'm a little concerned about that pinky injury for him. I really am. I mean, really, a torn ligament in his pinky on his shooting hand? And we've already talked about the troubles from Drew Holiday this season beyond 3, specifically in the corner where he was shooting historically last season. This year, it's dropped nearly 30 percentage points from the corner for Drew Holiday. I'm looking at him and going, is this actually going to be a concern come playoff time? Is he going to be able to handle the ball, shoot the ball effectively, efficiently later on in time? I'm a little worried about that injury for Drew Holiday, along with potentially whatever's going on with his shoulder, if that's an on and off lingering thing. If not, we've talked about it on post games of the past where it could just be something they throw out to rest Drew Holiday. This could be too, but you actually saw the splint and the wrap on Drew Holiday's hand, which concerns me a little bit. As for Porzingis, I feel like this is almost a calculated rest day, and that's what, to me, brings the biggest conspiratorial view of, well, maybe the Celtics just wanted to rest both of these players in a high intensity game and a much meaningful game for specifically the Cavaliers, because I think the Celtics know how they want to beat the Cavaliers, where the Cavaliers, they have to make up more within their pudding to actually make it taste good later on down the line. If they want to actually beat the Boston Celtics, they have to really rearrange things within their lineup and go to different looks within their lineup in which they don't really understand whether they have or not at this point in time. So I kind of look at it and go, well, maybe with the Kristaps Porzingis injury, there's a view here where the Celtics, they didn't want to give the luxury to Cleveland that, oh, you're going to see all 5 of our starters and put that on film. That's potentially what I look at here, but I am concerned about Drew's injury more than whatever is happening with Porzingis, because it feels like he sits out on the regular now anyway.
I have evidence to back that up. And do you remember in 2023, it was a game against the Philadelphia 76ers, very late in the year, and it felt like it was the Joel Embiid like MVP stamp game. He scored 50 that game. And that entire game, Boston played Joel Embiid just straight up. They did not send 2 people, just straight up in the post, which you never see Boston do. They always kind of try different things, different looks, different people. It was Al Horford playing one-on-one against Joel Embiid the whole game. And this was right before the playoffs hit in a potential playoff matchup. And you kind of saw Joe was asked about it, and he said, oh, you know what? Tonight we just thought playing him one-on-one was just the best option. And it kind of sparked that same conspiracy. Did Boston not want to give Philly that look of, okay, how are we going to play Joel Embiid come playoff time? And then the Drew Holiday thing, I'm not worried about it. He was listed as day-to-day. we kind of saw the same thing in the second half of the year last year with him with that shoulder. What was it, dead arm? And it was kind of the same thing. Is going to be an injury that could leak into the playoffs. Should we be concerned about this? I remember I was calling for Boston to shut him down towards the last 10, 15 games of the year. They didn't. Eventually, he had a great playoff run, Franco.
Yeah, I think that Drew Holiday is an essential piece going forward, especially going into playoffs. And it's it's an interesting approach to see how the Celtics medical team will handle this. This is one of those types of ordeals where you're going to need to make some decisions if you're going to rest those players. And they're really the reason why the Celtics are going to be able to carry on through the playoffs. And if those types of adjustments need to be made, you need to find something that works within your offense and defense. A lot of things can be pinpointed within this these defensive looks that you're seeing, and especially when you're facing a team like Cleveland who have star power talent to expose your weaknesses on your team. It's very coaching and adjustment and schematically based on how you're going to handle these situations. Obviously, Cleveland had an advantage against Boston tonight throughout the rest of the game when it came to rebounding. The Celtics didn't really do much about it, and you need someone on the defensive end to really step up. And if Derek White is someone I would point a finger at as the next man up, especially on a night like tonight, to fill in on the defensive end, but take on the responsibility of taking on Garland or Mitchell, vice versa. Ideally, I would have White and Brown on these on Mitchell and Garland tonight as the ISO matchups and really force those hard switches. And if it ends up happening that it ends up being Sam Hauser to guard him on a few shots, that's fine. I feel like Sam Hauser has proven throughout the season that he can hold his own within those smaller minutes that he's needed to play, but not during an entire fourth quarter. There needs to be a lot more answers to these problems, and I really think Torrey Craig is something that the Celtics can rely on at some point of the season to be a 10 to 15 minute player who can fill in and take care of these Drew Holiday moments. But that's something that you need to be weary of, especially when it comes to injuries. And the upcoming stretch is going to be interesting, and what we find out either today or tomorrow about those injuries will dictate how I think the Celtics should manage those.
Well, I got two things to off that what you just said. One regarding the Sam Hauser and the defense. I think Sam Hauser is a capable defender at times when there's backside help in rim protection, and he knows that. Okay, if I get beat, they're going to get met with a 7'3" center down there, and that's going to make me look a whole lot better if I get beat. Tonight, there was no rim protection outside of Tatum's 3 blocks, right? Horford really wasn't in the mix, and getting beat off the dribble essentially meant that Cleveland was either going to get fouled, or if they were going to get held up at the rim, it was a good chance at an offensive rebound if a guard was going up with it. Torrey Craig, that's good point. If you don't see Torrey Craig tonight play 20, 15 minutes, are you ever going to see Torrey Craig get real run with the Celtics? Because in my opinion, this is, and again, it's giving some Xavier Tillman vibes, right? Craig, last time he started, he went 0-4 from behind the arc. He couldn't really find a rhythm back there. And then all of a sudden he gets buried in the depth chart now. And that's kind of the same problem we saw with Xavier Tillman, where here he is, another liable option tonight, right? With your big men play not working. But he can't knock down a 3, so he's just not going to find time. So for me, I'm getting a little worried that Joe Mazzulla really sees no value within a player on the Celtics roster who can't hit a 3 if your name's not Luke Cornett. And I think that could be a little bit concerning because you could have used him tonight.
And I think tenure has a big source of
Right.
comfortability when it comes to Joe Mazzulla. Obviously, Pritchard, Luke Cornett, and Sam Hauser have been here since they've been swapping back and forth from the G League. So those guys have seniority in a sense over Torrey Craig and Xavier Tillman, but that's not something that happens in the NBA. If you need to be able to work in these guys, and if someone isn't working that you're used to, and someone can make up for those situations, that's when you need to feel comfortable splitting that time, and also having nights that it's almost a platoon swap, and
Right.
you're seeing a mix of Sam Hauser and Torrey Craig, but you want to get them. I feel like Torrey Craig will get more acclimated in some lower echelon games, but it has to be before playoffs, I guess.
I'm sorry, but Torrey Craig and Xavier Tillman, it pretty much exemplifies how terrible of a coach Joe Mazzulla is on some occasions, or in the long run of just this team in general. I believe Joe Mazzulla has his moments, but there are a lot of bad moments in between the good moments because the fact Xavier Tillman and Torrey Craig can't give you anything on a night like tonight. I mean, Brad Stevens would be using these guys. You know how I know that? Brad Stevens went out and got these guys from the market, whether it was the buyout market or the trade market last season or this season with Torrey Craig and Xavier Tillman. Those guys are two players who are supposed to be filling in minutes with the Boston Celtics, specifically on nights where two starters are out, Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis tonight. And you have room for both Craig and Tillman on a night like tonight because
Definitely.
Kristaps Porzingis comes out of the lineup. Your big man rotation becomes Cornette and Horford plus Kata. Well, go out there and use Tillman in that situation. Go out there and use Torrey Craig as a defender when your primary defender on the two best guards, or the best backcourt in the league in terms of scoring, Garland and Mitchell, when they're out there, go and use Torrey Craig when Drew Holiday is out of the lineup. Go out there and use them. The fact Joe Mazzulla can't find minutes for Tillman and Craig, and you even said if we don't see Torrey Craig 15 to 20 minutes tonight, when are we ever going to see Torrey Craig? Tonight was a perfect opportunity to go and throw him out there. And I don't want to hear anything about, oh, well, he's going to get acclimated in these, the games against the Charlotte Hornets or the Washington Wizards. No. We're not having him acclimated in those games because he's here to play big games. Torrey Craig has played in big games in his NBA career. He's almost a decade old into the league now. Torrey Craig. Technically, yes, he does because he either got a ring from Milwaukee or Phoenix in 2021. He was in the finals with Phoenix in 2021, but he's with Milwaukee earlier that season, so he's on both finals teams. So he technically has a ring for that, but actually didn't win the finals. Torrey Craig, though, is a player who's obviously played in big games. This is a big game tonight against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and it's a bigger game for the Cavs than it is the Celtics, I will say. But in the grand scheme of everything, go out there and play him. Play him in this spot. See if he's actually going to be able to play against a team that we could see later on down the line in a big spot, in which could be the Eastern Conference Finals. That's the ultimate goal here. I mean, these two teams could easily face off in the Eastern Conference Finals. And why not go out there and see if you have something in Torrey Craig before the moment comes around again in a much bigger spot in game one against the Cleveland Cavaliers. This isn't game one. If you lose this game, so be it. Well, guess what? The Celtics lost this game without seeing what they could have got out of Torrey Craig. And you can't tell me that they know what they have in Torrey Craig yet because they don't practice. They haven't practiced with him yet. Plus, he's only played in 4 games. So the Boston Celtics with Torrey Craig, I don't even care that he went 0-4 the other night from 3. Go out there and play him in this matchup, specifically when you're not getting anything out of Sam Hauser. I want to see Jordan Walsh out there more as well, too, because I think Jordan Walsh is a player that you can actually season up to being a legitimate rotation player someday. Maybe not in the starting lineup or anywhere close to that, but can he be your 8th or 9th man? I think Jordan Walsh is at least talented enough to eventually ascend to those heights. He's a guy that we have to be playing consistently, the same, if not more, than Sam Hauser out there. So tonight, I just want to point out that Xavier Tillman and Torrey Craig not playing tonight or in other games, specifically with 2 starters out, just shows the poor coaching by Joe Mazzulla. It showed if Brad Stevens had these guys, he'd be throwing them out there here and there and everywhere for what he could do. Joe Mazzulla, he looks at them and goes, well, you can't hit your threes, or I don't, you don't have seniority within this team. I don't know how to slot you in with Brown and Tatum. They never play. They never play.
Right.
I really look at it and go, when are these guys actually going to go in and get a run, and where can we actually use them? Because it's not like Xavier Tillman and Torrey Craig are nothing players. They still have much more left in the tank in their NBA careers, and if we're not using them on minimum contracts, that really shows something, and shows just the poor job by Joe Mazzulla within his coaching. And I kind of want to find another word for that. But I'll just leave it at a poor job for now for Joe Mazzulla, because that's what it is.
Well, also, I completely agree with you. And if you look at what Cleveland was doing, they were playing small. They were playing small and switch. It's almost like we made a trade for a small ball switchable defender that plays center. And, I get it. Tillman hasn't looked great at times, but you almost can't blame him, because what consistent burn has he gotten? And tonight, you needed to try it. You needed to try something. And you know what? That something isn't two-way Drew Peterson. I'm sorry, but are you serious? Drew Peterson gets a minute and a half, and Torrey Craig only gets 3, and then that's it? And then you played 7? I mean, come on. I mean, how? It's almost like lazy. And I agree. And it's clear as day. If you can't shoot the 3 ball, Joe Mazzulla wants nothing to do with you. And I think in a game like this, where Cleveland was playing much better than you halfway through the third on, and they were clearly attacking you in a manner that you couldn't find an answer to off the bench, you had to try something new. Tillman and Craig's versatility is probably their strongest facet of their game. I'd say so. I mean, definitely Craig's and Tillman. Tillman defensively on those Memphis teams, he was their starting big man in a playoff series against Anthony Davis, and he did a pretty solid job against him on the defensive end of the floor. And you had to try it. And I get it. I mean, I look at the roster, and the bottom half of the roster, Davidson, Shireman, those are two-way guys. Walsh is he's a standard contract guy that probably could be a two-way guy. He could benefit from that still. Antoine Watson's a two-way guy, and then Tillman and Craig there. So it's like you didn't have many options, but at the same time, you had 2 guys there that got no burn and really haven't gotten much burn that can contribute. They just can't knock down a 3 in a game where, it was very winnable without the 3 ball from one player out there.
25-3.
Yeah, I mean, it was very, very winnable, and he didn't.
Well, it was defensively too. I thought near the end of the game, I didn't really look at the Celtics' ability to generate points as the main problem. As you see, they came up with 116 on the night, started the game out on a 25-3 run. It was the defensive stops, particularly in the second half. I mean, really, down the stretch of that game, if the Celtics can just come out with a couple of stops, maybe they go out and win this game. And instead, it was just Cleveland scoring on each and every possession. And that's what I also want to add on with this Tillman and Craig conversation is you're completely right, Rob. Their versatility is their biggest strengths. I mean, really, both of those guys can come out and defend. Both Craig and Xavier Tillman can go out there and defend for the Boston Celtics. And instead, what's worried about is their offensive capabilities. Well, offensively, it didn't really matter tonight because nobody was giving the Celtics anything out there outside of Brown and Tatum. And Brown and Tatum were the only 2 at the end of the game, along with Derek White, who could score. So if you're going to keep going to those 3 players, particularly Brown and Tatum, why does it matter if Tillman and Craig are going to slot in with the offense or not? Right. Throw them out there for the defensive matchups. And I don't care about the continuity they have with the rest of the team, as defense is a team game. I still want to see them out there because I want to see them more acclimated with the team if the occasion rises where they actually have to go out there and play minutes in a big spot like we saw last year Xavier Tillman play in Game 4 of the NBA Finals, Game 3 of the NBA Finals last year, in which the Celtics won because Xavier Tillman came in and played big minutes in that game. I want to see these players acclimated, and the way you acclimate players is actually going out there and giving them minutes, letting them have a good run against a competitive team in the Cleveland Cavaliers. Tonight was an opportunity for the Celtics to go out there and really give different looks out in this matchup and get film for themselves. And it felt like they were actually saving film from Cleveland later on down the line. And ultimately, I want to say too, I found a word for Joe's coaching. ineptitude. It's complete ineptitude by Joe Mazzulla that he can't integrate Xavier Tillman and Torrey Craig into the lineup in some way, shape, or form on a night where you're missing two starters against a competitive team who you're going to see later on down the line. I would like to see Tillman and Craig play in the spot because in no other game this season are we going to be able to say, oh, Torrey Craig and Xavier Tillman, they had a good game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. They had a good game against a team that we're actually going to face later on down the line. This was the opportunity to go out there and actually see if you had that in them, if you're Joe Mazzulla and the Boston Celtics. Instead, they don't do it whatsoever. They don't give Torrey Craig or Xavier Tillman a run. And if you want to find out if they actually have something against the Cavs and need to actually implement those two players, Tillman and Craig, and actually give them some minutes in order to win a game, a ball game, a series later on in time, it'll have to be within the actual series against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And that's what kind of frustrates me here with the rotation decisions tonight is that you could have easily given those players a run to tell whether or not they were ready for this matchup, particularly Craig, giving them a look against this competitive team in a big spot. And instead, if you want to do that, if you're the Boston Celtics, you're going to be doing it in game 1, game 2 against the Cleveland Cavaliers later on down the line, which is honestly not the most ideal scenario whatsoever.
No, it's not. It's absolutely not. And I mean, it shows you, again, we mentioned it, it shows you how important the health is to this team because of what it could look like without like when you miss a guy. But also it's like this was the perfect opportunity to try it. This was the perfect opportunity to try it. You talk about film and what works. You could gauge something from the Cleveland standpoint. They were healthy. You could find out what works and what doesn't, and you didn't. And it's just frustrating. It really is. And you look at it from that standpoint. I think it opens up for me guys, but I don't know. It's just weird because here we are, Boston now losing. They have an opportunity against Denver to potentially drop 3 games in a row, which they haven't done in over 700 days. It's a game against a player you haven't beat in a long time in Nikola Jokic. I'm excited for it. But again, so it's like tonight, in my opinion, it wasn't a must-win game. I think Sunday's a must-win game. I said it before the Cleveland game, and now even more so, it's a must-win game. But tonight, everyone dropped the ball. So I want to say that first because I've been bashing on Joe Mazzulla a lot this post-game show. It wasn't just Joe. Pritchard was bad. Cornette was bad. Horford was atrociously bad. But overall, guys, in totality, percentage of stock, how much stock are you putting in? Like for me, I'm putting about 22% stock into this game in terms of what it could mean.
I'm going like 5 or 10.
Oh,
because
okay.
I for me look at this game and go, we were up for a grand majority of the game. And that lead tracker, they came back in the 4th. They won this game. The Celtics are without 2 starters. Every single game this season we've seen between the Cavs and the Celtics had a lead. And the 2 games in which they lost because they were without 2 starters. And their defensive rotations, their offensive rotations were all mixed and matched up to a point where the Celtics couldn't win the game, couldn't pull out the game. And so tonight I look at it and go, well, the Cavs, they finally got their get back. They were motivated to go and get their get back after what happened earlier this season in 3 separate games against the Cavs. And I really do believe these games individually are bigger for the Cavs than the Celtics. And the fact that they're bigger than for the Cavs than the Celtics, yet the Celtics kept getting out to big leads, that does say something about the Boston Celtics. And I think later on in time, this will be a game that we could look back at and go, well, Cavs got one up on the Celtics here, but in the playoffs, it didn't really matter because the Boston Celtics, when it came to actually bringing out their full healthy lineup and their full intensity for a full 48 minutes, I think the Boston Celtics are a much better team than the Cleveland Cavaliers. The one thing that I'll say about this little streak right now is the Celtics, we were just rolling. We were just rolling. I mean, we were 11-3 in the last 14 games, yet tonight, you drop back-to-back losses here, drop back-to-back games for losses if you're the Boston Celtics, and now all of a sudden you're looking at a huge game on Sunday. I would say 3 straight losses are not going to be the end-all be-all to the Celtics season and their back-to-back title hopes, but after a really good stretch here, losing 3 straight games would be a little disheartening for Celtics Nation and the Celtics alone, that they would have to rebound again from this year, and it would just have to be another hump of adversity they get over. But after this stretch in which the Celtics are winning consistently, it would not be great to see almost an 800-day streak of not losing back to back games. If that were to happen on Sunday against the Denver Nuggets, that would just be a complete halt to what we saw the last couple of weeks, or really the past month with the Boston Celtics, where they were just winning consistently, and then bam, they hit a wall. They face 3 quality opponents in the Pistons, the Cavaliers, the Nuggets. They lose to all 3. Then you're looking at the Celtics a little bit more sideways, going, all right, can we actually get back on the horse again? Because if we don't, we saw what happened in December and January when the team became complacent. We don't want to see that again. We want to make our way out of that stretch. An 11-3 run on the season, that's great. And not losing for a while, that was great too. But even amidst that, Celtics have to keep going and keep impressing us and keep the standard up on the wins there. And this, I want to say this about tonight's game too. This kind of had a feel with 2 starters out being tonight anyway, of potentially the Celtics going in there, they lose at home. The 1 seed is probably way out the door at this point.
Yeah.
7.5 back. It felt like it was out the door these last couple of weeks, really coming up to this date, because the Celtics were consistently winning and not making up any ground on the Cavs. I mean, it really was. It was 4.5 at one point, went back to 5.5. And then even amidst the Celtics winning a lot, it's at 6.5 coming into tonight. Celtics lose to the Cavs. Now it's at 7.5. I think this is a game where it kind of breaks the noodle a little bit in terms of the Celtics. They're not gonna be competing for the number 1 seed the rest of the season. They're gonna be competing to really keep that 2nd seed. And from here on out, it's just about playing well, which could take some stress off the Celtics back, as if there was any in the first place from them actually going out and getting the 1 seed. It seems like they've been pretty complacent with 2 all season long, I would say, just in terms of the conversation surrounding the team. But at this point in time, this game definitely breaks off the number 1 seed for the Boston Celtics in its entirety. The Celtics, they just have to keep continuing to play well, and it's going to start on Sunday against the Denver Nuggets, and it's going to be a tough matchup because the Nuggets, as of late, they've been tested. They played the Lakers, played the Bucks last night, lost to the Bucks, but then they won against the Pistons tonight. Jokic, a monster game tonight. They have been the Celtics' kryptonite over the past couple of years, but still in this matchup, the Boston Celtics, they should. I want to see it happen, because it happened at the beginning of this game tonight, and we saw it just completely go away. The rest of the game is play off the crowd. At home, the Celtics should have a crowd advantage, should have that home court advantage. Denver to Boston, it's a pretty long way, as we know. And that to me, and the Denver is on a East Coast road trip. This is a spot the Celtics should be able to come out and play with intensity, play with energy, and have the game plan schematically to go up against the Nuggets, and the size to do so if every one of the starters are in. This is a game the Celtics can rebound in. Just a question of whether or not they're actually going to rebound. And if they don't, what kind of streak are we going to start to see out of the Boston Celtics? Is it going to be every other game again, or is it going to be consistency? And that's what they'll have to find if they do not win Sunday against the Denver Nuggets, which would, of course, if they don't, be the first 3-game losing streak in a couple seasons for the Boston Celtics. But again, big one coming up on Sunday. That one is at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. So got to watch out for that one too. The early starts for the Celtics have historically not been great. Just saying, not been great in the historically early starts for the Boston Celtics. And that'll be one on Sunday.
You can't allow old habits to form, especially looking at the month or 2 prior to this one. This would be signs of that happening, but I wouldn't lose confidence within this team, and it wouldn't really be an end-all, be-all, or really concern button type of moment for me for this season, because I've seen this team be able to bounce back, and there's going to be some challenging path for the Celtics team, especially going through the rest of the regular season. It's after tonight, the momentum kind of eases off for the Celtics going through the rest of the regular season. There's no longer really any chase for that number one seed. If they did end up walking away with a win tonight, I would feel a lot more confident with this team going forward and really trying to press against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And who knows, maybe that loss against the Celtics would have knocked off the Cavaliers' confidence a little bit and made it a potential chance that they went for it, but it was still slim. And now it's completely out the window. So now I think you're going to see this team really refocus on just getting through the rest of the regular season healthy, being the second seed, or the second seed is going to be most likely where this team's going to be, unless New York starts to pick it up, which after the All-Star break, you're going to see that they're fatigued. So it doesn't really seem like there's anyone pressing against the Celtics in the rear view mirror. So, I think it's going to be definitely, it's an important game. Nikola Jokic is coming into town. Denver Nuggets are one of those teams that you would expect to see in an NBA Finals if the Celtics were to reach it again this season. They're one of the top competitors, and probably the matchup that's been projected by analysts around the league to happen in the past 2 or 3 years, Celtics Nuggets Finals. But it's once again now it's kind of switched my attitude towards these games, and hopefully this team sees this as an opportunity to learn and grow. And it's just now just a mission just to get to the postseason. It's kind of the it doesn't feel like there's too much pressure on the Celtics going forward, but it can definitely slip out of hand if they get too comfortable.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. We weren't never going to lose 3 games in a row, just in case, right? It was going to eventually, sometimes it's been almost 800 days. Eventually it's going to catch up, and it will happen. Not saying it's gonna. I expect Boston to come out firing Sunday. They looked upset. They looked pissed off. It's good. You should be. You dropped a game you should have won. Potential finals preview. I think, in terms of stock, I'm going to put a lot of stock into this game. Because again, this is, in my opinion, you look around the league, this is the one team I look at and I think to myself, ooh, finals could be risky. It could be, because again, Jokic, what he can do. Tatum, when he's matching up against Jokic, probably is the only guy in the league where it's like he's no doubt not the best player on the floor. And they haven't beat this guy with this core yet. And I think it's a great test for them at home. I also really think they need to get a big-time home win. It feels like forever since we've seen it, probably since that Cleveland matchup back in November, in-season tournament. So many tournaments, you lose track of which one's which. The in-season tournament game, that was a signature home win. That's since then, it kind of feels like it's been a lot of disappointment at home. It would also, I think, like you said, Franco, really opens up the rest of the schedule. You get this one off your shoulders. You got 5 more games at home, 10 more days back at home. Get right, get ready, and really just make that final stretch. You got about a month more you have to give before kind of seeding plays out. And you handle this month correctly, and you'll be set up pretty nicely for the last 2 weeks of the season to get prepared for the playoffs and secure that 2 seed, which gives you a little bit more time with that play-in. You kind of get an advantage with the days, and you get an extra week, an extra 3 days off, 2 days off versus the rest of the team. And this team could use that. As for the matchup with Nikola Jokic in this Boston Celtics team, I'd love to see them put some pressure on the guys around Jokic and less so on Jokic. We talked about last post-game show I was on, how you guard Jokic and what do you do and what approach do you take. I'm not so worried about Jokic because he's going to get his. Even tonight, he had 23 points. I want to say 18 rebounds and 15 assists. Talk about Tatum and how the Celtics are at their best when he's facilitating. Same goes for Nikola Jokic. I'd love to see the Celtics kind of sit back, play him one-on-one, throw bodies at him. Horford, Porzingis, maybe even try Jason Tatum out down there. And then just, put pressure on other points of interest. They run a lot of off-ball movement. It's a lot of actions on the backside where Jokic can find them in that high to mid post area. He's so good at it. He's so dominant. I'd love to see Boston really hone in off ball. I feel like they're a great on ball team. They can slip up at times off ball. So it's going to be interesting. I'm really excited for it. This is a matchup where anytime Denver comes into town and a player like Jokic, it's a fun one. But I'm going to label it. I'm going to do it. I'm sorry. Must win. It's labeled as a must win, in my opinion. You can't lose, both games at home to the really good teams. Tonight, okay, exception, little bit of an excuse. Missing KP, missing Drew. My guess, no Drew. KP should be there, though. This is a game, in my opinion, it's a must win. You don't want to lose 3 straight. You don't want to break that streak. And again, anytime Denver comes into town, guys, you got to take care of business. You have to.
Both the Jokic matchup, I think what's evident with the Denver Nuggets is you definitely have to muck up the passing lanes if you're the Boston Celtics.
Yep.
Because that's what, to me, between the Lakers and Nuggets, that's where the Lakers found the most success against the Denver Nuggets, is when they were mucking up the passing lanes, getting deflections and getting steals, and then running in transition and getting extra points that way. They absolutely dominated the Nuggets in that fashion in the game between the Nuggets and the Lakers in Denver last Saturday. That game, the Lakers, the way they played defensively made me think that the Lakers might actually be a threat out west to a team like the Nuggets, just because of how big they are, but how active they can be. And it doesn't seem like they have a full team of everybody is a great defender on that team, or even a great offensive player. But if you can really get into the passing lanes and really bait Denver into throwing risky passes and really turn them over, that's when you're going to start to see the Celtics find more success, because the Denver Nuggets, they're a team that likes to play in the half court. They like to also play in transition as well. But in that half court setting, the Denver Nuggets, they have one of the more efficient 2-man games in the league with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, both really great just playmaking skills within both of their games. I mean, both guys are just tremendous playmakers for others. And in that matchup against Jokic and Murray, the Boston Celtics, they're going to have to be a lot better defensively than they were tonight. And they're going to have to really, my number one thing for that game is get into the passing lanes, bait Denver into making risky passes, and ultimately try to get out and running in transition, try to up the pace of the game. We saw that work early on for the Celtics tonight. They went away from it, became stagnant, and they weren't getting after it on defense the entirety of the game, and that's when the game kind of fell off for the Celtics against the Cavaliers. Well, against Denver, they're going to have to persist that type of play throughout the game, and I think Sunday, this could be, it's a little bit of a litmus test for the Boston Celtics alone, because I know we're talking about, the Cavs litmus test is the Celtics in the East. Well, the Celtics, not only do they have a litmus test for the East for themselves with the Cavaliers tonight at home, well, Denver's coming up on Sunday, and you already said it, Rob, that could be a potential NBA Finals matchup, and that is the one team I look out there out west and go, okay, if there's any team I'm actually afraid of on the Boston Celtics, every team you can pick apart out west. The Denver Nuggets are a team in which could actually match up well with the Boston Celtics and really give them a fight out west. And if the Celtics go into this little 2-game series at home, mind you, at home, where the Celtics have not been able to find their footing whatsoever this season, despite being one of the best road teams in the entire league, if the Celtics go and drop the Cavaliers game at home and the Denver Nuggets game at home, I'm not raising questions or raising alarm bells, because we've just not done that all season with this team. And we got to see what actually it looks like when time comes due in the playoffs. But I am looking at this 2-game series and coming out disappointed, going, okay, well, this was the litmus test of Eastern Conference Finals and Finals matchup potentially at home, and the Celtics, they didn't play, and they didn't come play up to par. And I just want to say this about the Celtics home record real quick. Can we please win at home? I mean, look at the games up on the schedule. We have against the Denver Nuggets on Sunday at home. That's going to be primetime game. We're talking about it right now. But this week coming up, Wednesday and Thursday at home against the Blazers and the Sixers. Okay, those are two teams who are evidently tanking right now. The Sixers today announcing Joel Embiid out for the season, so you don't have to see him if you're the Boston Celtics. And you just beat him by 20 about a week ago if you're the Celtics. Those are 2 winnable games. Then you're playing the Lakers. That's a primetime game on Saturday. Late at night, Rob, you mentioned that game's at 8:30 Eastern. It's going to be just
Shame
a
on you, NBA.
really late game. And then you have Utah on next Monday too, where it's 7:30 at night. That's a home game. But then you have OKC. So Denver, Portland, Philadelphia, the Los Angeles Lakers, the Utah Jazz, and then you see OKC. You have, I would say, Denver, OKC, certainly contenders, Lakers, fringe contenders, and then 3 just absolutely tanking teams. I want to see the Boston Celtics perform well on this homestand here because at home, I'm disappointed with this team lately. I really am. Last season, that was a huge strength of theirs where they played well at home, and the Denver Nuggets were ironically were the team who beat the Celtics home streak last year and gave the Celtics a 21-20-1 record at home. But this season, the Celtics have been just putrid at home. Now they're still 7 games over 500 at home, so it's not been as if they have a losing record, but it's not been as good as last season. The Celtics, the one thing that you look at, the biggest strength of this team is actually winning on the road, but at home, if the Celtics could get it together at home, they might actually be challenging the Cleveland Cavaliers in the standings right now. Yet they're not, because that home record has just been all over the place. And on this next homestand, I want to see the Celtics establish themselves at home. I want to see them play to the crowd, and I want to see the crowd actually have an effect within the game, because we've seen that in Celtics history, how big that's been so many times in the past, whether it's a playoff setting or a regular season setting. And this season, and that's the one thing that's not been fun about watching the Celtics team, is that home crowd factor is only there half the time. And there's multiple reasons as to why that's the case, but just overall, the home factor has not been there for the Boston Celtics, and that's in recent years, and even Celtics history, been something that the city and the Boston Celtics lean on, is just that ruckus crowd, and that ruckus crowd bringing the Celtics to wins in which they have no business winning. And yet this season we haven't seen it whatsoever, but we'll still have an opportunity on the horizon with some contenders and some terrible teams in the sandwich there to fill out the confidence meter. The Celtics can actually go out there and win against and prove themselves more at home than they have this entire season. Because I really think in this playoff run, Celtics are going to have to be good at home when they're good on the road. But say that conference final series comes around, say that final series comes around, if you can win on the road, but the home games are going to be few and far between in those series. And later on in time, you might not have the home court advantage. And if you're just going to lose at home, and you sometimes can't get it done on the road, which we're leaning more so on the road than at home this year, that starts to become a little bit of a bind for the Boston Celtics later on in time in the playoffs. If you can't win at home, it's a tougher task to win on the road, and you can't always do that. And in series, that could be a factor that actually plays a bigger into a bigger equation for the Boston Celtics than we seem at this point in time. So right now, I just want to see the Boston Celtics consistently play well at home with this homestand coming up, because there's a lot of opportunity in front of them. And we just haven't really seen it all season long, that crowd and the team playing behind the crowd. They do it for little segments of games, but it's not throughout the entirety of a game. If we really go back and watch games 10 years ago, that home crowd was just a little bit different than it is today. And I'm a little torn over why exactly that is and why it's happening, but it's just not good for the Boston Celtics yet. I think they still, as a team, have a lot to do with it as well. It's not just the fans. We talked about the pricing out and blah, 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 but it also has something to do with the team as well, just playing consistently, giving fans something to actually cheer about.
They're doing the harder thing. If you can be good on the road, you can be good at home. It's easier. So stop making life harder on yourself. Don't get complacent. I think this team's gotten really complacent. And I agree, Seamus, your life, if you can't win at home in the playoffs,
it becomes hard.
Yeah,
you can kiss that back-to-back goodbye. If you can't win at home, we've seen it before. 2023, 2022, blowing games at home can cost you series. Last year, they were amazing. Actually, believe it or not, they actually lost game 2 against Miami and game 2 against Cleveland at home. But outside of that, right, that Indiana and Dallas series, they were flawless at home, and it made for much easier series. And eventually, the 4-game series against Indiana, 5-game against Dallas. So I agree, this is going to be a very important stint coming up, and I do think we're going to be able to gauge a lot between Denver and OKC at home, those middle of the pack tanking teams. It's a good healthy mix. So again, as for tonight, though, the Celtics,
the Lakers.
Even the
surprisingly.
Lakers, even though I think they're a little fool's gold, but that's a conversation for a different day.
That's just the Lakers.
Yeah, that's right. Anytime the Lakers come to town, though, it's going to be a good one, especially now that they got Luka and LeBron. Like Seamus said, that's a show. So that should be fun. Shame on you, NBA, for starting at 8:30. I mean, really, come on. What do I get it? Prime time, but what are we doing here?
And I'll throw out one for Justin here. Shame on the NBA for, now we saw it in LA, but green and gold uniforms or yellow. They're really Laker yellow, Laker gold, like whatever. Guys,
Yeah, what
they're
are we
yellow.
doing? Yeah.
But just throw out the green and the gold. No nonsense of this purple and white stuff.
Or the black. If we roll out statement, I'll be pissed.
I believe we're going white and purple, which isn't the most egregious thing in the world. But it is egregious.
Green
from the
and
standpoint
gold.
The Lakers have had phenomenal purple uniforms in the past, yet this year they messed it up to all degrees. And I don't understand what's so hard. Just do the classic green and gold matches out there. Looks great. Has looked great every single time.
Cool.
This time we're seeing purple. Just do it, NBA. Just give us the gold uniforms. I'm tired of seeing the purple on the Lakers.
Go back to the day where LA would wear purple on the road and yellow at home or gold at home. Though, you remember that?
You know what? I'm going even further right now. I want to see coaches wear suits again.
Bring back the suits.
I'm sorry. They're professional head coaches. Their profession is coaching basketball. Wear a suit to work.
You don't like
wear a suit to work. Just do it. They hate it. Okay, they hate it. But guess what?
Right.
It looked way more professional with coaches on the sideline wearing suits than it does nowadays with every single coach looking like your typical 40-year-old dad out there with his Skechers on and his pullover and his khaki pants on. It every single coach looks the same out there. And I want to see them look the same in a suit. I don't want to see the pullover. I don't want to see the Brad Stevens specials out there. I mean, the bubble and COVID opened up too many things for this league to do, and it hasn't returned the same.
Well, if they break out the suit, we
will.
If you guys don't notice, I wear the same jacket on Postgame every single night. It's like my suit jacket right here. The NBA. Wait, here we go. The NBA jacket, or the same jacket on Postgame every single night. If I can wear the same jacket, coaches can wear suits. And hey, we should. What do we need? What's the company? I don't know. What's a suit company you guys know out there? I'm trying to.
Joseph A.
Joseph A. Yeah, there we go. We need them as a sponsor. Get us
Men's
suits
Warehouse
on here.
grabs.
Men's Warehouse. Thank you. You know all the suit places.
I
have them up here somewhere.
Not for me. Shout out Pops and Brother, but I'm saying not me. I'm not rocking them.
But I'm in for the coaches wearing the suits. Straight up. I mean, it's my hottest take of the entire I don't know, NBA whatever season, or my I don't know, my hottest take of all time might have been Michael Beasley MVP 2018. I think we can maybe bury that one just a bit, but coaches in suits.
That was a thing.
Coaches in suits. Second.
I don't tell people that. You can keep that to yourself.
That is the second post game in a row, though. I think I mentioned it because now I look back on it and I go, wow, that's something I actually posted on the internet.
Seamus misses Michael Beasley.
He torched the Celtics. I'm thinking, if he gets the Knicks up to the 6th seed, it's New York. MVP voters, they love the fatigue. And Michael Beasley is a bust in the draft, comes back. He's a star for the Knicks. No, he was a minimum guy.
Did not work out. Did not work out how you saw it.
He walked so Dylan Brooks could run.
Hey, me and Pat Riley were the ones who believed in Michael Beasley. Just saying. It's only me and Pat Riley. So I'm in good company. Good company.
Well, guys, again, thank you so much for joining in and watching. The Celtics, they're going to be back in action on an early start. Quick, one more thing. Love these Sunday at 1 NBA. The second football's over, take over Sundays, start running games all Sunday, start them at 1. I love them. Just saying. I went to the last one, and it was against New York. It was amazing. You still have the rest of your day. But so again, they're gonna be back in action this Sunday, March 2nd. At 1:00 against the Denver Nuggets. After the final buzzer sounds over there, guys, come right back here to the Celtics Talk Weekly YouTube channel for Celtics Talk Weekly postgame show, guys. As for tonight, the Celtics fall to the Cleveland Cavaliers 123-116. Again, Jason Tatum was your SeatGeek player spotlight. 46 points, 16 rebounds, 9 assists. The first time that that stat line has been marked as a Boston Celtic. Very impressive stuff, guys. Again, unfortunately, we lost, so cue the music, but it's going to be a sad cue. Until next time, guys, you know the drill.